Hi, Fee here, the Healthy Vegan author. So over the next little bit of time, the vlogs are going to be about the fabric industry. And each week I will take one particular material and give you the lowdown on it. So today I'm going to start with the most obvious one, leather. But first, a wee bit of history. It's the ancient Greeks who are credited with developing a tanning formula which used certain tree barks and leaves soaked in water to preserve the leather. So this was a vegetable tanning process and became an extremely established trade in Greece around 500 BC. Now, obviously, animal skins were used before then. Paleontologists have found traces of organic materials on stone tools from around 40,000 BC. This suggests that skins could have been used for, different things. It's also believed that early man probably figured out how to make leather when they found that animal skins left just lying on the wet forest floor were preserved naturally, and this was by the chemicals released from the decaying leaves and vegetation. The tanning process was developed by many different indigenous people, and I think that they all had their own kind of special way of doing it. A very long time ago, I spoke with an old Native American man who told me that his grandfather showed him that any animal could tan its own hide. This was by using the fats and the brains of the animal as a type of curing method and then smoking it with hickory wood. Well, he said hickory wood. And so this preserved and somewhat softened the skins. He went into detail, which I'm not going to go into here. It was quite blech. Okay, so the plant-based tanning method arrived in Britain via the Romans. However, it did make the leather a tad too hard. So in the 1850s, chromium tanning was invented to soften it. During World War II, phenyl formaldehyde resin was used. Now, modern technology has developed chemicals and sophisticated processing methods to really get the softness and the flow and the feel of the leather we know today. So now we're confronted with two major issues with leather. The first is where leather comes from, obviously, and the second is the environmental impact leather now has. Just as back in the caveman days, leather is the hide of an animal, and it comes from several different animals. Cowhide is the most common, but it can also come from pig, sheep, goat, and buffalo. Exotic leathers come from farmed animals such as snakes, ostrich, alligators and crocodiles, emus, deer, even horses, cats and dogs. Then you have the animals that are hunted specifically for their skins, like zebras and bison, kangaroos, elephants, lizards, stingrays, and seals. And just so you know, the really luxurious leather comes from newborn veal calves. But the really prized leather is called slink, S-L-I-N-K, which comes from unborn calves, like those born dead, or heavily pregnant cows that have been sent to slaughter, or deliberately aborted calves, usually done in the dairy industry. And this is called calf induction, either done if the cow has gone over term or to keep the cow within the time frame of the whole herd. It's a practice that's no longer legal in New Zealand except for certain circumstances. I don't know about other countries. So pretty much all the animals in the ark, including unborn babies, are fair game to be used for the massive variety of items that leather is used for. Most people believe that leather is a byproduct of the meat industry. Well, globally, more than 1 billion animals are slaughtered and their skins are tanned, so you can see how that assumption is made. It's kind of true, but, and it's a big but, there is an important economic interconnection between factory farming and the leather trade. Farmers do not sell every single part of the animal to minimize waste, but to maximize profit. And actually, the hide is about 10% of the animal's total value, which means it's the most valuable part, pound for pound. So one could even say that meat is the byproduct of the leather industry. In India, where much of the leather comes from, the cows are forced to endure brutal and grueling journeys in order to get them into the areas where they are allowed to be killed. Up to 900 can be crammed into train wagons intended to hold only 80 to 100 animals, and on arrival, nearly half of them have died. Some travel by foot, where the workers will beat them, break their tails, and even rub hot chili peppers into their eyes in an effort to keep them moving. Now, I've only touched on the animal side, so now we'll move on to the environment. As I said, the early leathers were tanned using natural plants, and by the 1500s, salt and oils were used to help soften. This type of leather could rot away when the item was discarded, but with the advent of using chemicals, all this changed dramatically. So, not only is there pollution from the factory farms and the dairy farms where a lot of the leather is coming from. Let's face it, these factory farms are extremely dirty, with millions of tons of waste being generated, not only contaminating both the ground and water, but also the millions of tons of methane which is released into the air. But with the tanning of the hides, there's the chemical process using a concoction of chemicals and toxins such as ammonia, cyanide-based dyes, formaldehyde, and even lead. Some of these are carcinogenic, and so not only are the pollutants being released into the air, the ground, and the water supply, they also endanger the health of the tannery workers and those who live close by. Then there is the disposal of the leather. Going into landfills, it takes between 25 to 50 years to break down, and in the meantime, leaching their disastrous pollutants into the surrounding area. This is a brutal and destructive industry. One is not helping either the animals or the environment by buying leather. In fact, one is perpetuating the problem. So, what can you do? You can purchase the many cruelty-free alternatives that are available, both in natural and synthetic materials. And that goes beyond clothes because leather is used in so many places. You can choose to recycle and buy second-hand to keep the leather out of the landfills for as long as possible. But that is totally a choice you have to make. Many vegans don't like the idea of wearing an animal skin, whereas others are okay with it, trying to reduce the environmental impact. Just do what sits right with you. And now it's time for the wee bonus fact. I mentioned cats and dogs at the start. Well, leather coming from China, India, and other developing countries will use dog and cat skins and sell it off as cow because it can't be identified, and it is deliberately mislabeled. It's getting more prevalent. In China alone, an estimated 2 million cats and dogs are killed just for their skins. When I tell people that, they are horrified. Such a carnistic view. One where it's okay for one animal, the cow, to be used for their pretty shoes, but not okay for the other, the dog. So there's a wee piece of fodder for you. Ask your friends who are wearing leather if they bought it cheap, like on the internet or at a warehouse type place, or even if it was expensive. Does it say made in China? Then tell them it could be dog skin, and just watch their face. That's it for today. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, hitting that notification bell. And I would so love your comments. Remember, have great food, make it whole plant-based, and be compassionate to all animals, including humans. Bye for now.